Welcome to Joyride with Expatriates. In our show, we bring every month a different person who either is or was an expatriate and is willing to share their stories with us to inspire us to take action to pursue our dreams and our goals. Hi, I'm Tati Fittipaldi. I'm a change management strategist and a certified professional coach. In this channel, we make videos to help global leaders, multicultural professionals, and expatriates become more productive, more effective, and improve their leadership both in business and in life. If that sounds for you, click that subscribe button now. Today we have the pleasure of having Andre Mindlin to our show. Andre has worked over 20 years for Fortune 500 companies. He had numerous executive roles throughout the years. He is a board member of the CLSA, the Canadian Laboratory Supplier Association. He works for Olympus Corporation. Andre lives in Canada, is married, has 2 kids, and a pet. So please help me welcome Andre to our show today. Hi, Andre, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our interview today.
Hi, Tachi. Nice to see you again after so many years.
Thank you.
And thanks for the invite.
Oh, yes, sure. It's actually my pleasure. So how about we start warming up by you telling me where you come from for the audience to know, and what you used to do before you moved to a different country.
Okay, so I'm originally from São Paulo, Brazil. Right before I left Brazil, currently I live just outside Toronto here in Canada. And right before I left Brazil, I was working for General Electric for G Life Sciences. And that was my last job. I have been in the healthcare life sciences industry since 2002, 2003. And before that with telecom and IT. So always in sales, marketing, business management.
So you were a very successful commercial person. I remember you we worked together. So you were very successful. So I was wondering, what drove you to decide to move to a different country?
Okay, it's like it can be a very long story, but I'll try to keep it short. But so back in 2002, I came to Toronto for the first time, and for part of my MBA that I was doing, and part of the classes were here at the University of Toronto. And since then, I always wanted to move to Canada. Since then, so that was a long story growing in me that wanted to move outside of Brazil for multiple reasons. Then in 2009, I managed to get a permanent residency for Canada, but then the need was I needed to make a proper transfer, not simply let go everything and be an easy rider. That would not work for me. So then in 2016 with GE, it came up an opportunity to transfer. But what drove me, it's that I just felt that I always felt better here in the sense of how people interact with each other, and the security, not only on the physical security, but the general sense of being respected by government and the general groups. Like we don't have surprises every day like we used to have, unfortunately, in Brazil. Like to one point where I think I heard that even the history in Brazil can change. So I think that always bugged me a little bit, and I was like, okay, maybe I need to try something else somewhere else. Maybe I will make it right. Maybe I won't, but that was always a bet. So since 2002, I wanted to come, and that passion and that interest only grew since then.
So it sounds like you identified yourself with the values of the place, of the people in Canada. So you were drawn by by the people, by the place. It's quite interesting to see this kind of.
I was drawn by everything but the weather. Everything here was really pleasant, The weather, definitely not. But then again, as they say here, if you're well dressed, I mean, the weather is definitely not a problem. So I think, yeah, the culture, the people, the diversity that we have in the country, and the way the country behaves towards its citizens and immigrants, newcomers, as well as other countries. So that has always been something I cherished.
Well, I'm sure Canada is very lucky to have you because you are not only
Thank
a great
you.
person, but you're also a great professional.
You're
So,
gonna make me blush now.
so my next question to you is tell us a little bit of what you are doing now and how it came about. Like you mentioned you were working for GE before and then you moved. So how things changed for you up to this moment?
Okay. So I worked for GE for about 8 years. Most of those years were I was in Brazil, leading Brazil and Latin America's regions for the life sciences business. When I moved to Canada with GE, I was also working for the life sciences business, mostly focused on the North American market, mainly meaning Canada and the US. It was a very interesting experience in both the pain and the love I came to learn. So it was the same company, but it was not the same company. It was different in so many ways, even though the culture, the values were the same. I just learned after 6 years with GE that GE in another country was a whole different environment. And it turned out that after a while, it didn't really work out for the way I would expect, and probably to a certain extent, even to the way the company expected. So we decided at some point to go separate ways. And I was looking for the market in a different country. It was a little difficult at first because I moved to Canada. My wife, she resigned her job to transfer here. So suddenly we decided it was making no sense because G told me that, okay, listen, it's not going to work. So we're going to give you some time to figure it out. And it didn't work. So suddenly it was the two of us unemployed in a different country where none of us had networking or extensive networking to sustain us getting new foundations in here. So started chasing the industry, talking to people, connecting, having coffees over and over in Starbucks and Tim Hortons every other day with people. And to your question, what I'm doing for a living right now, for the past slightly over 2 years, I work for Olympus. It's a Japanese company, very well known in the medical devices industry, but also for microscopes, which is another segment. But the company also works with other things like remote visual inspections for airplanes, engines, turbines. The company also works with non-destructive testing for pipelines and oil and gas industries. So what I do right now, I lead the business unit for Canada for the remote visual inspection, non-destructive testing, and microscope businesses. So I'm in charge of this business unit for Canada. How this came about? That was interesting because after searching in the market here for a few months and getting the door closed quite a few times, frustration was really growing, and I started chasing outside, even considering moving back to Brazil. After all, I still have family, friends, and almost my entire history there. So it wouldn't be a problem of moving back, other than sort of giving up a dream. So in that, I connected with colleagues back in Brazil. They came up with an opportunity for a position in Brazil with Olympus. I interviewed with that one. It didn't work out, but ultimately HR came back and said, "Hey, the company liked you, but not for Brazil. Are you still interested to stay in Canada?" I said, "Well, ultimately it makes my life much easier to not have to transfer everybody back to Brazil again and have all the frustration of moving and then soon after moving again." So then I took up this job with Olympus about 2 years, 2 months ago.
Wow, that's very impressive. Like not only your resilience and your strength to endure in a difficult time, as you said, it's not easy. You just moved in a new country, you're overwhelmed. There's a bunch of things that you're learning, and still you were able to keep your feet on the ground and search for a new job. And one of the takeaways that I take from your story is that sometimes we never know what our actions will lead us. So you were interviewing for, you know, a job in Brazil that you eventually were considering go back to Brazil, but that helped you and, you know, keep things in Canada and help you keep your dreams. So I think that's an awesome story of how we can, you know, we should be resilient, and we can grow, and we can look for every opportunity. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I think when you go abroad, when you move, I mean, and most of the people I most connect with, they all moved abroad. I think when you move, if you move from Sao Paulo to Recife, or if you move from Sao Paulo to Manaus, it's a change. It's a whole different weather pattern. It's a different culture. It's a different type of the spices and the food and the way people behave. So even within Brazil or within one's own country, there are geographical, cultural differences. But then when you move to a different country, you can probably have that to square or something that it multiplies. It's just the problems and the challenges become much bigger. So I think some of the challenges are, you spoke about resilience, and I think at least every single person I know that came to Canada, or the ones I know went to the US or other countries, I think all of one thing in common everybody has is resilience, and a lot of grit as well, because otherwise you just don't make it. Because because as I heard before, you're being slapped in the face every single day from day one you move to a different country. And so the resilience, not only to say, okay, you know what, I lost my job, or I'm looking for a job, but the resilience to say, you know what, I have to reset everything I always knew and I always had, from the way you deal with the public services, from the way you deal with banks, from the way you deal with utility providers, you name it. I mean, the list can go on and on. So once someone wrote an article back 4 years ago, even more so, about moving abroad. And one of the things that this person said was, when you move to a different country, it's like you die. And you have to be reborn. And by reborn, sorry, go ahead.
I saw that article. Is fabulous.
So it's so basically you have no credit score. So when I came here, the bank said, I told them, okay, I have some savings. Can you give me credit? And the answer was, are those savings in Canada? I said, no, they're not. Also, I'm sorry, I cannot give you credit. You're going to have a credit card with $500. And for the next year, you paid in time. Don't exceed 30% of the credit that you have. So basically $150 a month. So you had to prepay your credit card for about a year before they say, okay, you know what, from 500, you can increase it to 2,000, so that you can start going from day to day things like groceries, fuel, whatever. So I think to start with, I mean, your time driving a car in Brazil didn't really count much. So you had to start from scratch with a new driver's license. You have to start from scratch with the bank, credit score. When you want to rent a house, I mean, you may have been the best payer in Brazil. They take it for granted, and they just say, no, okay, prove me. And sometimes they do even things that are illegal by asking 12 months of prepaid, which is not lawful here in Canada. But landlords might ask you that. So you put yourself in a position where you are faced by challenges every single day. And even to other things like, okay, so winter came first time. Okay, do I have to shovel the snow every time, or how do I do it? Do I have to wait and see how my neighbors are doing it? So it's really a whole learning curve all the way from scratch. Can you make it? Yeah, of course, everyone can do it, but it requires an open mind to actually pay attention to everything that is going on around you and say, okay, this is how things should work under the circumstances and the environment I'm living. So yeah, but that without resilience and also without discipline, it means nothing. You have to have the discipline to, I mean, okay, I failed today, I'm going to fail tomorrow, but maybe after learning a few times, I will no longer fail.
So I captured three things that you considered: discipline, resilience, and open-minded. Be open-minded.
Oh, be open-minded. Yeah. And also, I mean, just that now that you brought it up, I think open-minded, when I look at my neighborhood here, I mean, I have probably in my street, we may have 15 to 20 different nationalities only in the street where I live. In the building that I lived in Sao Paulo, I would say probably maybe one or two foreigners. Everybody else was Brazilian. So I think be open to having multicultural environments and seeing people dress differently or behaving differently, and understanding that they may sound strange to you, but that speaks to new immigrant countries like Canada, the US, and probably New Zealand, Australia, where you have a lot of those. Not saying that other countries don't see it, but over here it's part of what Canada is.
So, and that's quite interesting. So you're mentioning that you are seeing a lot of, immigrants around you. So I was I was wondering, this could have been one of the changes in mindset that you had to have, but I was wondering, what was the biggest change in mindset you had to have when you moved to Canada?
So I think the biggest change in mindset, maybe in Brazil or possibly in Latin America and quite a few countries out there, I think you get used to um, have people serving you for things. You would have a nanny, or you would have a maid that will help you with the house, and you have people. So in countries like Canada, I mean, I can speak for Canada, but the cost of those services are outrageous.
Just
So so if even if you make the same amount of money proportionally from Brazil to Canada, ultimately you have to say, okay, you know what, I have to let it go, and I have to do a lot of things myself, just because that's how things are. The do-it-yourself approach to things, how do you build furniture, or how you take care of your backyard, or how you shovel your snow. People do hire others, yes, but not as often as, and it's not as common as back in Brazil. So one, changing the mindset about how people interact, and the social gap between who does your lawn, if you hire someone, and the CEO of your company is not as big as you would see in Brazil. So sometimes people are like, oh, this person is doing a survival job sometimes, and this one is a CEO. But ultimately, when you look at that, I mean, they're people doing jobs. And so I think in Brazil there is still a little bit of prejudice in a way. So I think that was a very interesting learning to see this on a day to day. So this is one. Second is also understanding that you don't know everything. I mean, I planned for many years to come here, as I mentioned before, but I also read somewhere that you only learn to swim when you go into the pool. So it doesn't matter how many books on theories on swimming and improving how you swim, unless you go into the water, you don't. That serves that serves for nothing. So being here, that changes everything on how we perceive things, how we perceive value on what we are surrounded with.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and I think many expatriates may relate with that. Like they say, "Oh, I thought that I knew what I was going, what to expect, but then when I am actually there, things change." So this shows how, we, of course, it's very important to plan everything ahead. So because when we are overwhelmed, we sometimes don't have, the spirit and the mind in the right place to make a good decision. So it's good to plan ahead.
I
We
I think when sorry, when I think when most people start dreaming about going abroad, they after they came from an interchange program where they were here in the US or Canada for a year learning English in high school. You fly to Canada, you fly to the US with a ticket to fly back home. So you know there is a way in and there is a way out. So everything is very well timed, and you live that life for a year. Whether you like it or not, it's a different thing. But when you come without a ticket to a return ticket, without knowing, well, okay, will I be there for a year, 10 years, for the rest of my life? Will I ever go back to Brazil or any other country for that matter? That changes the perspective on things. So it's sort of, you uproot yourself from where you everything that you're used to. Again, the food, the music, the way people engage. I mean, if you're gonna have a barbecue in here, if you invite Canadians, you invite, okay, let's have a barbecue from 2 to 4. You don't say come over for a barbecue at 2, and people will hang around until whenever they leave, like we are used to in Brazil. So getting used to that type of approach to things, and be open to this is key.
So that's very curious, and and it's also probably very challenging. But I wanted to know from you what was your biggest challenge.
Okay. I always liked adventure. I always liked to travel to different places and expose myself to different environments. And I always thought I didn't really have roots in Brazil. So I was like, okay, you know what? I can roam the world at will, and it will be okay. But every time, and I used to travel a lot when I was with GE, I was always coming back home. I was always coming back to the home I knew, to the place where the family was, and cousins, grandparents, and parents, and friends. But then when you move, and when you go away, and you start seeing that, okay, so now what about my parents? And they're growing older. And what about my grandparents? They're growing older. So that was really a challenge for me that I was not expecting. I didn't see that one coming. I was probably I didn't see that one coming on all my planning and all my preparation to move. But then when you have the kids and you start raising those kids, and your daughter goes to you and say, do I have a grandparent? Do I have a grandmother? And so making them understand that their family is more expanded than just the nucleus, like father, mother, or whatever family structure it is. So when you start getting those questions from the kids, that they don't understand that their family is larger, that they have more people that wonder about them, care about them, even though they're not physically here, they don't understand it. And also not allowing the parents and grandparents to see their grandchildren or their great grandchildren growing is something that sometimes I struggle with that part. But other than that, I mean, I think most of the challenges are feasible. The operational things, banks, driver's license, you can get over it. It's just bureaucracy. Just get over it.
Takes time.
So,
So how did you overcome this particular challenge that you mentioned? How
no,
did
we
you
don't.
deal with this?
I think you have to learn to live with that. So, of course, nowadays you have Zoom, you have other tools, FaceTime, and that allows for people to see and be seen. So that allows, but again, it does not take away the fact that you're 5,000 miles away, 7,000 miles away, and therefore the touch and feeling the hug and other things. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, yourself, you also an expat, so you know what I'm talking about. So I think we can overcome with the technology in a way, that emotional part, in the sense of, okay, family do know real time what's going on, and so we know what's going on back in Brazil almost real time. So that is no longer a problem. But that, I think you have to learn. It's just like the first time we went back to Brazil, um, coming back to Canada was really painful. The second time was not as painful. So you just
That
you're
learning, yeah.
you're yeah, you got that learning, and your skin gets harder. I mean, the skin gets harder, and it's easier to deal with those. But the feeling that does not go away.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So this comes to, since you talked about your kids, that comes to my next question, which was, tell us a little bit, how was the adaptation for your family, for your wife, your kids? How was that for them?
The kids was couldn't be easier. My daughter was 3, my son was 1. The dog was a little older, but the three of them handled it beautifully. I mean, nowadays they can navigate very well between Portuguese and English. They can, other than the dog, of course. But I think the three of them really took it very easily. They adjusted, and they understood this new culture. The struggle now is to make sure that they understand that what we see and live here in Canada is not the sole reality of the world. So then when they go back to Brazil, they don't struggle with the differences, on the way the houses are built, on the way people live and communicate. So we want to make sure that they're multicultural and they understand those differences. On the other hand, I think at first my wife struggled significantly. For the first year was really difficult for her. One, she has always worked, and when she left her job to move to follow me here, that was really a very painful process for her. We moved here right in the middle of the winter, which didn't make things easier. When you just come from the airport and you have like 2 feet of snow in front of the house, and you have to really carve your way through to get to the front door with a 1-year-old on your arms, and so I think she struggled a lot. Then when she was getting better with understanding the new reality, there was the situation with GE, and then everything that was improving went backwards for quite some time. So, but I would say she said at some point something that was interesting. She said that for her, Canada was an arranged marriage. So it's like someone pushed her to engage with this country. So at first there was hatred, like, I mean, why? I mean, why am I being pulled from where I like and where I'm comfortable and start engaging with this new country? Then later she said, well, you know what? I mean, we got the security, we got this, we got that, we get this benefit, we get this other benefit. We get to see new people, new cultures, new places. So what was hatred started moving into, okay, you know what? I don't dislike it so much. To, okay, I like it. And I think she's now moving from the I'm liking it very much to I'm starting to love it. So, but it takes some time. So I mean, I hear a lot from a lot of people that moved. First, if you can make it through the first year, maybe through the second year, then you're probably bound to be successful. The first year is really tough.
That's very interesting. I published an article on the 5 phases of the expatriation adaptation process, and what you described about your wife is exactly that. Like, you go through a denial phase, and then you go to a resistant phase. You're not denying, but you're sort of still resisting, and then you start exploring, you start testing out things, and then things start not being that bad, and then you start settling. So it's very interesting that you said that. It's quite interesting, and it's good because other people will probably relate to that too. So you mentioned in the beginning resilience, discipline, be open-minded. I was wondering, based on your experience coming to Canada, what skills do you think a person has to have in order to be able to adapt, to all these changes, all this new big transition, which is moving to a different country?
Okay, I'm trying to steer away from all those skills that I already mentioned, but I think at the end of the day, let's start trying to steer away a little bit from the being open to the new, right? When you come to Canada, they're like, okay, companies, in order to hire you, they want to see you have what they call Canadian experience. So basically, they want to see if you're able to adapt to the Canadian corporate culture. What does it mean? Honestly, I don't know. It can mean a lot. Can mean maybe it means nothing. I didn't face it because I moved here with GE, and then I moved to a different job here. So I didn't face that struggle that a lot of the immigrants face when they are trying to find their first job in the country. So, but I think sometimes people are like, oh, we cannot get hired unless you have this experience. So they sort of take a step back instead of trying to keep plugging away. And I think one has to be very persistent, and first be persistent in getting things fixed, whatever that is. Finding a job, finding a house. How many examples of friends we have here that they failed to get their houses simply because their credit score was not good enough, or they couldn't prove income, or they couldn't. So there may be quite a few different reasons. So what you do you simply give up and go back, and then you just throw away all that you learned? So being persistent is one, which is different from being resilient. But the resilience is sort of a fancy word these days, but I think it's a good one that actually represents what we are faced every day. Again, to the point on being open to the new. When you go to the office, you have to talk to people from different cultures. And I have seen friends, Brazilian friends, who are like, oh, I may not be able to get a job because my English is not perfect. But when you look around yourself, at least in the Greater Toronto area, where probably 60% of everyone living around here was not born in Canada, then a foreign accent it doesn't make you different. you're probably the majority. So maybe your accent is Brazilian, but the guy next door is Indian, and the other one is Pakistani, the other one is Chinese, whatever. So, but people are afraid, and so um, don't try to go for this thing. I have to be perfect on things, and in Brazil, we're all. I recall people saying, unless I'm an expert in what I'm doing or a perfect in what I'm doing, I'm not gonna try to take that step. There is a need here when you take this when you go into Guarulhos, or when you go to Galeão and you fly out of Brazil to Canada, you already took a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith, no matter how hard you. Oh no, it was a very clever decision, or it was a very well thought of decision. It is a leap of faith. It doesn't matter how you want to look at this. Continue taking those leap of faith. What is the worst that can happen? Refuse but to a job, not getting a house. Okay, go keep moving. Turn the page and don't give up. I did meet a few Brazilians here that they gave up a year and a half later, and they came here and they were expecting that the country is always doing this advertising. Oh, we want immigrants, we want people. Of course, the country needs people, but it doesn't mean that the country will be giving jobs away and giving you housing and other things. So what is it that those people expected when they showed up here at Pearson Airport, and they were like, okay, where's my job now? Oh, I'm going to run out of cash. Oh, I didn't plan accordingly. So what? Get a job, get something. I mean, do something at least to reduce the bleeding that you may have in your financials, if that's the case. I know a lot of people that they do a lot of different work here. One of our great friends here, he's a contractor. He does a lot of, he's a handyman, and he lives very well. And he was an architect back in Brazil, and he decided to be a handyman here. He's happy. He's making his money, and he's taking care of his family. That's fine. But that is a mindset that um, I feel that sometimes our culture in Brazil prevents us from taking that step and say, okay, it's sometimes it's easy for a Brazilian to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to take vacation. I'm going to London and I'll be a barman. But sometimes when they get a job offer to be a barman in Brazil, they're like, no, that's not my job. The job for me. What is the difference? So, so I think that the understanding that things are different and should be treated as such is probably going to be key to survival in the long run.
So I also heard, it sounds like you're saying also, besides the persistency and the resilience, open-minded, and discipline, you're also saying courageous. So you have to be courageous, and you have to,
Oh, yeah.
put yourself out there and make sure, things happen, take action.
But you have to be courageous to live in São Paulo. Every time you go get your car, drive to your office, go visit a friend, you have to be courageous. You have to be courageous to leave. That's the sole truth. But we start taking some things for granted. Traffic is not a problem. Security in São Paulo. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna buy a bulletproof car and I will just keep on leaving. So I would say, now being courageous is key. But I think it just flourishes in a different way when you are in a different country.
True.
Just forces you to and being afraid of things is not a problem. I mean, I think we all are. We are concerned. We are afraid. We all have fears. But there is a difference between when you have a fear. There is a difference between freezing or trying to take action.
Absolutely.
Right? If you freeze, then you're probably bound for failure. Okay. I mean, I think the mountain climbers that climb to Everest and K2s of the world, they're not unafraid of climbing. Fear keeps them alive because they are paying more attention to what's going on around them. So I think we should also learn how to handle our fears, because they keep us they keep things in our radar. We keep on looking at things just to make sure we don't fall into those crevices or we have those problems. So yeah, that's another thing that probably understanding how to manage fear is key, along with being courageous, which can be, they're not opposed. Being courageous and fear they're not opposite.
I love it. I love it. And that reminds me of that phrase, I laugh at the face of fear.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the other day I gave a presentation to my team here, and one of the things I think it's from Evil Knievel, and they say bones heal, but the glory is forever. So you know what? What is the worst that can happen?
Exactly. That's so true. So my next one is, I wanted you to share a story of something that happens to you and your family that helped you, become more adapted or helped you adapt better?
I think to help adapt better, honestly, it's all about people. It's really about people. Um, Again, you can go through all the bureaucracy and get all paperwork done, but that's just paper. So that doesn't adapt you to things. But when you get to a new place, it comes the weekend, you don't know what to do or who to meet or where to go. So we happened to have a family of friends living here in Toronto when we arrived here. Um, they were not close friends; they were just more acquaintances back then. Then they became really friends, and even more so, family. Our first year, as I mentioned before, it was really painful, through and through. No matter how hard I tried to look at this, it was a pain all the way. But it would have been much worse if it wasn't for this family. They were there for us every single step of the way. They were there for us to pick us up at the airport. They were there for us every time we were crashing and wanted to cry ourselves in our tears. And they did it. They made us understand that people are here to help each other. And interestingly enough, you see a lot of people helping each other when they're abroad. That happens way too often. Which sounds like, wow. I mean, there is a future for mankind. So I think that family made us survive through this first year. And then when we were here for a little over a year, this friend of ours, he was transferred back to the U.S. to Texas, and so we saw our support family leaving. We had a few other friends back then. That was about almost 4 years ago now. But when they left, it was like, okay, so we are losing our ground again. I mean, they're removing the floor from the below our feet. So that was really painful. But I think in order for you to adapt, you have to get to know people. You will meet great people. You will meet people that are just there for a reason or for a certain amount of time, and that will not stay on. I mean, we got to meet people, didn't really turn into a friendship or a networking that was worth sustaining. But on the other hand, we also met a lot of people that we keep very dear to our hearts at this point, and they became like one of your former interviewees, she said, like a soul family.
That's very interesting. So actually, that comes to one of my last questions, which is, having I see very often how having support groups really help expatriates, and it sounds like this family that you just mentioned, they were part of your support group. So I was wondering if you can tell a little bit about what kinds of support did you surround yourself with, to help you out, especially in the first years.
Okay. Definitely, as I said, people. So we got to know more people. We were making a trial and error. So we met good people. We met people that were just not in line with our beliefs and our expectations of behavior. But that's fine. I mean, there is nothing wrong there. It's just, they say that birds of same feathers fly together, right? So we met birds that were not the same feathers, so went separate ways. But we got closer and closer to a lot of people, to quite a few people, and we still have very good friends. We meet every weekend or every other weekend, sometimes even during the weekend. We are here to help with oh, I need to leave my kid because I need to go do this, or I'm having a medical problem. Can you drive my kid to the hospital? So we end up having that support network that actually helps at the end of the day. There are quite a few groups of Brazilians here. I'm not directly involved with some of them. There are quite a few group support network. Like one of them is called Network for Brazilians. Amazing job that those girls are doing. I tried to engage with them a few times, and they opened the doors for me. It's just that my agenda, my schedule was really not helping a lot. I did support a few newcomers by WhatsApp or phone calls to help them understand where they should go to do this or what should they do to obtain. So the helping others has also become something that is really interesting. So I think we feel that it's very natural when someone shows up at your door and say, "Hey, can you help me make my move to my new house?" Yeah, let's go carry some boxes and fix some paintings on the wall. That's fine. And because we got that, we received that from people that we barely knew. So I think those supporting groups are key. during that first year, especially, I think trying to keep yourself in shape was really key as well. So going exercise and trying to do that. Even to this day, I try to go biking every morning, at least for an hour or so. Some friends are trying to create like competitions, and I'm not. I'm just for the fun. But but yeah, I would say keep yourself physically healthy helps mentally, but also engaging with people will help keep the spirits and emotions under control.
I love the tip about health. I think we usually, forget about that, especially when we're very overwhelmed. We sometimes, leave aside some areas of our life,
Oh,
and sometimes we leave the health the
so
last.
easy to do it. It's like probably the first thing that is left aside.
Oh, so so our last question, let's put it this way for the show, is actually so we are going to launch a deck of cards in October, and I wanted you
Hmm.
to have a first glance of one of the cards. So how I wanted to do this is show the cards to you. You're going to read the card, and then you're going to tell me whatever comes to your head regarding on how the content of the card or the concept of that card relates to your adaptation process.
Okay,
How
sounds like a
does that
plan.
sound? So I am going to, so let me share my screen with you here real quick. Let me know if you can see this is the back of the card. I chose a card randomly. You got the number 3 of the black deck.
Okay.
So, and this is the card.
Okay, I decide my life's vision and purpose. I'm in control of my life. Visionary ideas crystallize into my mind, providing me understanding and creativity in my life. Enlightenment. Oh, that's an interesting one. Visionary ideas. Hmm. I think we are a consequence of our thoughts, right? I mean, if we want to believe that we'll succeed, we'll find a way to succeed. I mean, it might take a year, 2 years, 3 years, but then when you put into your mind, oh, you know what, I'm a failure. I mean, you're also bound to do it. It becomes like a self-fulfilled prophecy. So, um, I'm not saying that you have to be like everything is rosy and everything looks awesome. And no, it's
Oh,
not pretending or trying to paint gold where it shouldn't be painted gold, right? I think we have to be very truthful to ourselves. But really, trying creativity is hard sometimes. I mean, I don't think I am very creative in many ways, but I think that I'm very strong in visualizing what I want to accomplish. So and then making plan A, plan B, and pivoting from one plan to another, and understanding that pivoting doesn't mean failing. Changing the direction doesn't mean that you're bad or your original idea was not successful. So, so definitely we have to have a clear understanding of what is the end goal. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? What is it that's going to make you happy? I have friends here in Canada. One of them is living in Vancouver. Amazing guy. He had a very nice position back in Brazil, and he came back here and he started from scratch. Literally, he was a controller in a company, in a very large construction company. And he came here, and his first job. He was counting underwear inventory for Victoria's Secret from midnight to 4 a.m. He was not ashamed to do it. He said, and then when I met him, and that was back in January, he said something. He said, I had standard of life of living in Brazil, and I exchanged that standard. I wanted to exchange from standard of living to quality of life. So he said, I made much less money here than I used to make back in Brazil, but still I can have a car. I still can travel. I still can enjoy a better air quality and other things that he valued more. It's not wrong if you want to stay in Sao Paulo. By all means, I have most of my families all there. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if that is what drives you, that's fine. But if that doesn't drive you, then taking that leap of faith and, you know what, putting your mind to work to this. Yesterday, another acquaintance of mine here in Toronto, he texted me saying that he finally, after 3.5 years, he managed to get his process to get to into the permanent residency. So this guy struggled big time for 3.5 years here to get to that. And honestly, I mean, he really struggled, right? I mean, he couldn't get a job, and then he had to face a ton of different problems in his life here, but he never gave up. I mean, there was a few communications at least 2 years ago from him, and I was like, wow, I mean, he's probably planning on going back, but he never did. So he crystallized this in his mind, and that became reality. And now he's accomplishing this. Kudos to him, and to pretty much everyone who is able to cross the ocean and try life where they believe their life should be.
Absolutely. Reinventing ourselves is not something easy, but
Nope.
but it's definitely worth it, right? We of course struggle, but it's definitely worth it.
And again, if it doesn't work, go back. I mean, you can always go back to Brazil. I mean, or you can always go back to your home country if that's the case.
And doesn't mean
And
fail. It just means that
no,
it is what it is. Things are meant to be.
so when I tried to climb the Aconcagua back in 2010, I got very close to the summit. I got about 550, 200 meters to the summit. I didn't make it for multiple reasons. And I was very disappointed. And the guide told me, he told me that was your summit. You're better making to that summit and coming back alive with that experience than making another 150 meters and dead and not having a story to tell.
Absolutely.
So I definitely see the value of trying. I mean, again, if you think about it, what is the worst that can happen?
Absolutely. That's awesome. Andre, thank you so much for being here.
My
I
pleasure.
really loved your stories, and they're very inspiring, and I'm absolutely sure that it will inspire a lot of other people. Is there anything else you want to share last with us before we part ways?
No. First, I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and see you again after a few years we haven't connected. So that's definitely really good, really great. But definitely to anyone out there who wants to do it, if you have the means and you have they say it here, I don't know if they say it in the same in the US, but they say if there is a will, there is a way.
There is a will, there is a way. Yeah.
So try it. Try it. I mean, it's not going to be rosy. It's not going to be easy, especially in the first year. But why not? Why not? I mean, go for it. Keep plugging in, and if it happens to go back to Brazil, you're bringing back the experience.
True. We're always learning, right? That's a
Yep.
mastery orientation kind of mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, thank you so much. I'm so glad. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
My pleasure, Tachi. Anytime.